Another great question, especially now in the season of Lent. The question, of course, is how can lay people better prepare for reconciliation? We can just make this for anyone, lay people, religious, priest, whoever. How can we better prepare for reconciliation? Why is this an important question? Well, especially during this season of Lent, this is when so many people go to confession. Obviously, we have Lenten reconciliation services, ours coming up in March, but you don't have to wait until then. There's no need for that. Okay, you can go whenever you feel like you need to go or should go. Now, let's not go every day, probably, but let's go when you think God is calling you to go to confession. But how should one prepare to go to confession? Well, there's always been an examination of conscience, and we're called to do this not only before we go to confession. Actually, we're called to do this, if possible, every single day. Some people do it before they go to bed. Just be careful. Don't wait until you're laying down and trying to do an act of contrition or examination of conscience, because chances are you're probably going to fall asleep. So maybe you want to do it maybe a little later in the evening, but not right before you go to bed. Maybe you do it in the middle of the day when you're most awake. But to examine your conscience to figure out, where have I sinned? Where have I failed? But also, in that examination of conscience, where am I making improvement? But let's focus once again on, before you go to reconciliation, what's a good way to examine your conscience? Is I always like to use guides. This one right here, maybe you can see it. It's Guide to Confession. This was put out by St. Charles Borromeo Church. Father Abbott and I have this in our confessional to hand out to people if they need help going to confession. And this is one I've been using pretty much since I've been in college. And I still look at it here and there. Again, what it does is it goes over the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments. Now, of course, you can find this guide in the confessional, other places. You can buy books on how to go to confession. You can even go online. You can even go online and figure out, print off an examination of conscience. A great place for this would be catholicscomehome.org, or just Google. Just Google examination of conscience before confession, and it'll take you step by step through the process. So, the most important thing to do to prepare to go to confession is the examination of conscience, and then also to ask God for courage so you can actually step up and say what you need to say. So often we can be tempted that we're not going to tell the priest everything. No, tell the priest all of your sins so you can completely be forgiven. Don't hide it. If you hide it, you're not going to feel that freedom that comes from going to confession. Hope that each and every one of you use the sacrament of reconciliation, especially during the season of Lent, but throughout the year. Let's not only go during Lent or Advent, but let's go throughout the year, especially if we've messed up. But when we go, it's very important to go in there, already examined our conscience, so we may truly give to God everything, all of our faults, and that He may forgive them. Hope you're having a blessed Lent so far. If you see this video right after I post it, come by the fish fry tonight. It's going to be a great time. Of course, stations, Mass, every Friday night during Lent here at Epiphany. So come by for those as well. God bless.